rise for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
There are no agenda adjustments. We'll move down to 2, consideration of minutes. 2.1, to approve the minutes of the June 12th, 2024 Board of Directors meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing as there's none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor? All those not in favor? Abstaining? All right, at this time, we'll move down to number 3, public comment. I give an opportunity for those guests out in our audience to come up to the mic and let us know what's on your mind. Just make sure you say your name and where you're from. There are no petitions and communications. We'll move right down to 5, reports, the superintendent's report.
So just reporting, I've taken some vacation time, which has been very nice. I had a sad day. Kathy's last day was last Friday, but she went over everything I need to know. And all my, with her going, some of us are picking up some of her jobs and duties, so we need to learn some things we haven't been able, that we hadn't had to do before. So we had a great meeting today with administrators. We did our kind of end of the year, how did the year go, reflecting, talking about plans for our summer retreat, plans for the next school year. And so it went really well, I think, today, of just kind of reconnecting and having a breather to say all the things that went on last year, and successes and challenges, and getting ready for the new school year. So it was a good day.
Thank you. We will move down to 5.3, administrators report. We will start off with Oak Hill Middle School, Amy and Jenny.
So they're all coming up at once. We
Oh,
kind
they
of
are?
did, yeah, we did a little.
Okay.
We did it this afternoon.
I start? All right, I guess I'll stand. Hello, good evening, everybody. So we're going to present as a team just our overview of our school goals from fall to spring. Some of this will look familiar to you, as you saw many of this throughout the school year in our updates. So I'm going to tackle the incidents overview. So this has to do with behaviors in our schools. And so you can see on the left-hand side are our goals or incidences from last year. And so I'm covering the primary and elementary schools, and then Sue will take over with the middle school and high school. And so for Liberty-Tozier, the goal was 85% of one or less referral to the office, and their actuals was 91% had one or less referrals, which is excellent. Sebattis Primary School, the goal was the same, 85% of one or less referral to the office, and their actual was 88%. And Carrie Ricker was 85% one or less referrals, and their actuals was 89%. So increase all the way around on those positive impacts. And we'll talk a little bit about what those positive impacts were once Sue covers the middle school and the high school.
Again, the theme is decreasing the incidence. The middle schools last year, 271. And this year, 117, 57% decrease in incidence. High school, 296 last year, and this year, 190, 36% decrease in incidence. Does anyone want to explain why? The things that we're doing to help with this, we are doing Tier 1 interventions, PBIS, as you probably are hearing in your elementary schools. With the you guys doing bar teams, catching kids before they actually have a problem figuring out how to help and support them. Right. Do you have any questions on this slide?
Can I just ask a quick question? On the middle school and the high school, above that, it's one or less referral. Is that indicated in that as well? Those numbers are one or less referral, or is that total referrals? So middle school and high school those are the total number of referrals, and above is one or less. Was
Right,
goal?
the elementary
but there's not
schools-
like a number; it's just a percentage. Is there a number for those that it stays? Oh, okay. That's okay.
So the way we wrote them is just to reflect the goals that we did, but both Libby Tozier, Sabatis Primary, and K. Ricker School did have a decrease in incidents overall too.
Can I ask a clarifying or just reword it? So when it says 91% had one or less referrals, it means 91% of the student body?
Correct.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. I was kind of like.
Yeah, it is a reverse thing. Yeah.
Mhm. Anything else?
All right. So I'm going to report out on NWA reading. And just to remind folks, the way our percentage goals were written, the elementary schools and the high school were measuring on growth goals, so individual student growth over the course of the school year, whereas the middle school, we were measuring proficiency or achievement for grade level standards. So we have our goals written on the left-hand column, and then our spring growth goals for each of the schools are listed here. The next column, the middle one, is fall achievement, looking where we started for proficiency, and then our spring achievement scores. So all of the data is there for all of the different schools. And what we're doing to support this work and the growth that we're doing, coaching cycles at the elementary and primary schools are set up with our math coaches and our literacy coaches. We're working with teams and teachers on data analysis, so really understanding and diving into that data to understand where students are based on student needs. We're making decisions to really inform instruction. At the middle school, we restructured our English language arts classes, and you can see here that we're making some growth here, which is great. District-wide, we're doing RTI. We have different RTI structures in place so that we're supporting students' needs and where they need interventions, we're supporting that. We have students taking ownership of data, so we're talking to the kids about what does this mean? What does your data show? And we're really having students be part of the process, so that's making an impact as well. And then being intentional with vertical curriculum work. So grade levels are doing cross-curricular work together, having conversations, making decisions together as a team. Questions? Go ahead.
So I make sure I'm reading the chart correctly.
Mhm.
So just take Libby Tozier because it's on top. So the goal was 45% growth. So in spring of we got spring of 24 growth was 28%. So that's not meeting the 45% growth.
Correct.
The fall achievement was 83. And then spring of 24, that's achievement, not growth.
Correct.
All
So,
right, so you're
for
showing
grade
two
level
different-
standards,
So
yes.
okay, different standards. So any idea why the achievement drop looks like for everybody between the fall and spring in the achievement columns?
It didn't for the middle school. It went up. Just want to point that out.
I'm sorry.
It
I'll
did
give
go
you
up.
that.
I don't want to speak for the other schools. I don't know if you guys want to speak for what you guys are doing.
Just a
Anybody?
pretty big drop in some of them.
Yeah, the standards and the expectations increase throughout the year. And so, first grade, for example, the amount of growth that they need to have within a given year is huge. If you compare it to other grade levels, like that's a big foundational year. But clearly there's room to grow from the data that we're given. And it's not fun to look at that. And there's room for growth.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to math.
Can I ask
Can I just add?
Yeah.
I think really a lot of what they're focusing on is obviously instructional time, the curriculum, and checking on those things. So remember, this is kind of the average, right? So we're looking at where are things successful, where are there classrooms where things are successful, and where are classrooms where there may still be room for improvement. So this is an average. So this is like big picture, and then we dive deeper in looking at each classroom, and then we look at each student. So it has layers of what's going on. So you can see success here, and then you're wondering, okay, what's going on here? Is it the instruction? Is it the curriculum? Is it the pacing? Is it student engagement? So a lot of work this year was trying to identify what is going on so that we can have the urgency to make changes. So that's what our discussions a lot this summer are going to be. How are we going to work to keep tackling where we're seeing the strengths so we can replicate that, and where do we need a lot of support in individuals. So this is hard because it's looking at the big picture, but there's a lot to celebrate if we looked in deeper at each teacher, each student. This doesn't tell the whole story.
And I think to dovetail off of what Katie's saying, I think it's important to note that this is our universal screener, so this is how we have to report out statewide on our data. Classroom teachers have summative data, there's formative data, there's anecdotal data, there's a lot of different points of data, and anytime you're looking at data, you're doing a triangulation of data. So this is one piece of data. It's not how we're testing kids all the time, so it's different data. It's important data, but there's other pieces of data that we do take into consideration as well. So I think that's just important to note.
Yeah, and I've said it for years. I believe the national growth charts have a use, but if you have a second grade student reading at that level and throughout the year that student grows, that's more important to me than where they fit on the national scale. And I've said that for years. I want all our students to grow from where they start in the fall to where they end in the summer. And we used to get those numbers like that on our individual students by class. And I think that's a way more useful number for us. And I know we have to go by the national average, and that's what, information that we have to input and all that, but knowing that our fourth grade, fifth grade, sixth grade student comes in reading at a third grade level and leaves reading at a higher grade level is more important to me. And I think that's a number that we ought to bring back. So we know our students are growing.
That's pretty much what I was going to say as well. I feel like when we report out on NUIA, it doesn't give the accurate picture, and people tend to think they're hooks into this and don't necessarily see the other pieces. So I wonder in the future if there's a different way that we can demonstrate growth. I know we have to report out on this because this is the state standard and this is what is expected of us through the DOE, but I know that there's more going on in our schools than is what is reflected here. And it's really hard to make the argument when we don't have a benchmark measure to be able to have people help people to understand that, yes, this is it, but it's also a snapshot in one moment in time. And I know as a professional student for a really long time, like, we all have bad test days. It's unfortunate that for some kids it tends to be on the day that they're doing standardized tests, and then not all of our students give the 100% effort when they're doing standardized testing, because the better you do, the longer your test is, and they know that. So I do wonder if there are other measures, and maybe it's in this presentation, or maybe that's something that we can think about as a district moving forward, because this isn't it. This is not, I don't believe that this is reflective of what's going on in our district.
I would just like a definition or an explanation of what RTI is? You mentioned that earlier, and I don't think everybody knows that acronym. I don't.
No, good question. It's response to intervention. So just where students are struggling, where there are gaps in their learning, it's structures in place to support those needs. And we're using data. This is one piece of data, other pieces of data, benchmark assessments, summative assessments to support those gaps.
If I may, so we were seeing graphical information about the students showing those that were above the, the different percentiles, so we were able to go and see over a period of time those that moved from below the standard to it or above it. I don't see it here. We haven't got it for spring numbers. I think we got the winter numbers.
And we can definitely have that in the fall as we do our data presentation in the fall.
And while comparing, so I'm one who, I don't know that I support, but I acknowledge that comparing our scores with the scores statewide and nationally is important, because that's who our children are going to compete with, our students are going to compete with when they leave our educational system. And I think that our community members have a legitimate right to believe and see our students doing pretty close to at least the average for the state, right? And not being in the bottom 10%. But, and, anytime you rank people, there's some in the top 10, there's some in the bottom. It's just the nature. There's one first and there's one last. But we need to be in that middle. And the only way you get to see that is through standardized testing, because every student in the state's taking the same test, all have a certain percentage of students that don't perform well or having a bad day or don't want to take the test, so they flop it off. But that's kind of a norm around the state. So I think this is showing our goals, the goals that we set. So that's not state information, right? What the state wants is the achievement numbers or the scores off the tests, and that's what they're going to publish out in their spreadsheets, and that's what our taxpayers, residents are going to look at. If they go out to DOE and look up test scores, they're going to look down there and they're going to see. And the state keeps changing them. I used to graph them. I had many years of the old ones, and for each grade class, going up and showing how they were doing compared to the state averages. And oftentimes we were doing better, and sometimes we were off. And I think
The state has not published them yet. So the fall will bring back that information.
right, but we have the information
Yeah.
for locally,
Yeah, we do.
right? So
Which
that's
is what you're seeing, the proficiency rate. Yes.
okay. So the achievement is
The
What
achievement is the
Yeah,
proficiency.
the achievement is the proficiency rate that comes from the NWA, yes.
okay.
But we have goals to improve.
Yes. you always do.
So for NWA Math, we have partnered with the Maine DOE for the Math for Me partnership, and we have coaching cycles going throughout pre-K through 4 with different teachers, looking at instruction, focusing in on small groups, tying to curriculums, making sure there's differentiation in the classroom. Data analysis has been really important, and even though NWEA is one piece of the puzzle, it's really nice to be able to go and drill down and see, okay, what are the students that we need to pull? What can we tie from these pieces that they're showing us to our curriculum, get them in those small groups and give them the instruction that they need. And of course, you want to compare that to other tests as well. And then at the high school, they're really working on student ownership of data as students get older, with them owning the work that they're doing. And across the district, intentional vertical curriculum work, curriculum teams, department heads, in meetings where there is a group of people committed to move forward our schools in that path. Thank you.
All right, we're going to take a look at attendance here. So our goals are lofty ones, but I think attainable for our district. but there's a pathway to get there. So as you can see, for 23-24, the elementary schools and high schools attendance goal is 95% of all of our students will attend. That means 6 students, that means kids on vacation, every single one of our kids. At the middle school, it's 97%. So if you're looking at the actuals, Libby Tozier is fairly close at 92, Spadis Primary 87, Carricker 88, 92 at the middle school, and Oak Hill High School. So some things to think about that we've noticed on this journey with attendance. So for those students that are continuously absent, we have small pockets of those students in each school. It's hard to get those students back into the classroom, right? Once they're out, especially after COVID, you get in those routines where you're out on a regular basis. So some of the things that we've done is to reach out to those students on a regular basis. After 3 absences or trends, the teacher will reach out, email, call, or we will also keep track at our SST team. We meet once a week, and then we will make phone calls as well. Beyond that, we have our truancy tracker, where we track students and where they're at. That also involves, at some point, creating a plan with the parents. How are we going to get your child back into school? And making sure that they come in, have a meeting with us, create a plan so that the students can be successful. Of course, there's a direct correlation between attendance and academics. So we feel that this is very necessary, and that's why our goals are so lofty, is because we want to make sure that every student in our district is succeeding.
Moving forward, we met today, as Katie already explained, to see where do we go from here. So we will meet as an administrative team over the summer and with the building leadership teams over the summer to work on universal Tier 1 instruction district-wide. We're going to continue the implementation of PBIS and BAR. We've already seen proven results on the reduction in discipline across all the schools, and so this is something that's already working, and we're going to continue its implementation. Monitor attendance and student engagement strategies, ongoing data review to identify strengths and areas for improvement.
Thank you. We will move down to 5.6. Kelly is here with an update about the community garden.
Kelly, I have done your handout, so if you want to
Awesome.
refer to that too.
Okay. So I have a quick verbal update and then a handout that's being distributed around. That was wonderfully shared on the RSU4 web Facebook page as well. So tonight I present the conclusion of my graduate research opportunities study, a GROW, to you, the RSU4 school board. Since my last district update, we started SEEDS on Monday, March 18th, and kicked off AG in the Classroom as a weekly series for the Sabattis Primary School staff and students with a field trip to the early greenhouse on May 2nd. We hosted all 10 of the first and second grade classrooms. It was an awesome opportunity to work with whole classrooms, creating know and show sombreros as we learned about the 6 things that plants need to survive: place, light, air, nutrients, water, and soil. We successfully held 6 of the 7 planned AG in the Classroom lessons on Thursdays from 9 to 11:30 on site at the GROW at Sabattis Primary School. Each week our GROW grew. The space provided the opportunity to build out their classroom plots, which with lots of sweat and no tears, the help of the students, we did complete all 6 plots. Miss Rachel from Healthy Androscoggin and Mr. George from Rural Community Action Ministry assisted as experts for cooking with garden ingredients and preparing plots for planting. As school closed, our weekly visits due to, Miss Rachel hopes to coordinate with the RSU4 Summer Camp administration for a weekly offering as a student-based garden cooking club over the summer, so watch for that. SBS students and their families are invited and encouraged to help keep their classroom plots flourishing over the summer months. We've planted first grade classroom plots intentionally to engage classrooms as they plan to harvest the GROW together in the fall. I have applied for a competitive Maine Garden School Network School Garden Caregiver Grant. That was a long title. With both Principal Stevens and Superintendent Grondin's written support, the award would allow us to continue to offer AG in the Classroom for the next fiscal year. However, we would be able to expand outreach for a full academic year versus just seasonally. So that's exciting. In the early spring, the Garden Club did acquire a mini grant award from the Maine Environment Educational Association to incorporate a sunshade sales system as part of the Grows design. That will be installed over the next few weeks, so keep watching. It is a beautiful architectural piece that will hopefully bring people to the garden. However, the award's purpose is to include UV awareness education to the district's community members, and that'll help them during the month of August. What you have in front of you is the July newsletter. Mondays and Saturday mornings will be dedicated to maintenance and tending. A highlighted opportunity to share with the RSU4 community is the Maine Backyard Camp Out Initiative. I am an outdoor educator. I teach camping. So one of the things that we'll be doing is on Sunday, June 14th from 2 to 6. Camping gear will be there to touch, feel, explore, knot tying and s'mores, and campfire conversations for the whole family. Wrapping up the month, we're hosting an Art in the Garden workshop on Wednesday, July 30th from 5 to 7. Find us on Facebook, which keeps a calendar of the events and a post of recent happenings. But I'm so thankful to have this opportunity. My graduate work was long, and there was a lot of delays, but we did it. There's actually a garden. So go visit. It's over at the primary school. Enrollment, though, for the season has closed. So registration will open in November for the next growing season, April to October of 25. I'm hopeful for community member engagement as we begin to publicly gather, complete small stewardship projects. And as some of you may already know, a garden's work is never complete. So I invite you to come grow with us. Learn about the opportunities at sabattisrec.com/garden and how membership can be obtained. Thank you so much for your time. And you can ask questions if you want. Good? Thank you again.
Thank you.
Yeah.
What does RCAM stand for?
Rural Community Action Ministry. Thank you.
And thank you, Kelly, for all your hard work on that.
We'll move down to 6, starting with old business. 6.1, our budget overview.
Couple extra. Anybody want? Okay, so I'm just going to go through the overview, and I think then, Jill, you're going to open it for discussion. Yes. Okay, so the first slide is just kind of going over where we are currently. So this is the budget that was approved at the public meeting, however, did not get approved at the referendum, and that was the $23,377,580, which was the 8.34% increase. So that's just reminding people where we are. Then what I did is looking at where we went for the last budget that was approved and pointing out some areas that you could reconsider in a reduction, if that's what you end up wanting to decide. So on the non-reduction list, so what I shaded was already what has been reduced. And then what's in white is available for discussion, which is $15,000 in the PD travel. Remember, this is to pay for people to go to trainings or sign up for new learning and travel. So if this is reduced, we did leave some travel money, but people would need to look for free opportunities. We also have grant funds that we would need to look at, but there would have to obviously be pre-approval does it align with what we would support? And so there would be obviously scrutiny around what PD would be supported if we needed to pay through our grants. The other item is the field trips. We discussed, remember this, which would be that there wouldn't be field trips supported. We would have to be, as we get into the spring, look to see if there was any available to allocate towards field trips. But those lines would not have funding. The other item that was added that you haven't seen before is a reduction of $25,000 to books and periodicals, and that's because when we looked at funding as we came, remember when we talked about May and June, what can we buy now to offset the budget, knowing, we always have to have Plan A, Plan B in case the budget doesn't get approved at referendum. So we were able to buy textbooks for the high school that went through the curriculum committee with Kathy Martin. So we purchased those so we can reduce that number. Okay. So you could look at another reduction of $46,900 in non-position reductions. In position reductions, we put out there before looking at right now, Carrie Ricker has a set of specialists, which is an art teacher, a music teacher, a PE teacher, and library ed tech. And then Sabatis Primary and Libby Tozier share a set of specialists. And so reducing the specialists at the Carrie Ricker would then have specialists going to 3 schools rather than 2 schools. And so we've worked on a schedule. They will continue to work on the schedule if you decide to do this around to make sure that they get their planning time, that they're able to meet the demands of providing art, music, PE, and library for the students. You'll notice that there are 2 open positions in those. Also, the PE teacher, there would be movement there. So not all those teachers have spots. There would not be a RIF involved, a reduction in force involved. The library teacher at the middle school has transferred to a teaching position at the middle school. And so we've advertised for an Ed Tech 3 position there, and we do have a candidate that we're looking at. And so there's a savings between the cost of the teacher and the Ed Tech 3, and the savings is $21,200. There's a special education Ed Tech open. We put that there. And then if you look back at the prior presentation, there were 2 kindergarten Ed Techs there. We're only removing one of those. In really thinking about Libby Tozier and not having the same level of resources around a person that can support, we felt it's not feasible really to cut both of those. They have 2 kindergarten Ed Techs that help with response to interventions. And so it would be reducing one of those, which is, and then having one, we have one that's open. So that's just, the difference there is instead of reducing 2, we're only reducing 1, so that they still have someone that can help support the staff because of their resources. So in summary there, the other thing we talked a lot with Norma Jean around technology needs, and we looked at the network specialist position again, and we're looking at bringing that back to an Ed Tech 3 with a network focus. So it was advertised as an Ed Tech 3 position with somebody who would have some skill level at network. And so that was a savings of $15,000. So on the table here is $323,200. There's a slide here in central office because that was something that had been discussed and we've never gone forward. So I just put that there as a talking point. There's no savings to the budget. The other thing that Samantha and I talked a lot about is fund balance. So there's a chart here about where our fund balance has been and how much we've been using to offset the budget. So as you know, we're using 400,000 currently, and so we're proposing to raise that to add 129,900 for a total of 529,900 for fund balance. So in the next slide where it says summary of proposed changes, you'll see that if you did the non-positions and then you did the positions, it would be 370,100 reduction to the budget overall. Then if we increase on the revenue side to add the 129,900, that would be a $500,000 reduction to taxes, to the additional local taxes, which would be a decrease of 10% to the local taxes. Okay. So then when you go to the last slide, you will see the, what does that mean to the budget? So it would bring down the budget to $23,007,480, or 6.63% increase. So we did not change the cost centers on this slide. Instead, I just gave you the total because we have to wait and see where you go. We are prepared that if you go in this direction, all the paperwork is lined up. If you make changes, which is fine, that's part of the discussion, and we come to consensus on where we're going, we'll probably need to take a recess so Samantha can redo the papers, redo the calculations.
So we will go ahead and open up the floor to discussion. This is something that we've got to get done today because we decided to fast track this, so this has to be discussed. And we all kind of got this a couple weeks ago. You all went home with something like this a couple weeks ago, except for Christy. So I want to open up the floor for the discussion. Bob?
I have a question. On the last slide, you got two numbers down in the bottom. One's a 6.63% and one's 5%.
So I added that because when we were all talking and saying, are we going to be at 9%, are we going to be at 3%, I wanted to show if you were going to try to aim for a 5%, you'd have to reduce another 351,000.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
And then my other questions are on the savings position reductions. So we're saying that these positions, like our special ed tech and our kindergarten ed tech, their total compensation package is either 45,000 or 27. We have a Oak Hill Library, and that's going to be a reduction to ed tech for 21.2. So a library ed tech makes 30,000 with all benefits included in our district.
So remember, we know the people's salaries and so forth.
Well, this is an open position.
This is an open position. Which one do you want to talk about?
Well, let's talk about, because these numbers seem low.
Yes.
For
Correct. So it all,
knowing what our contracts are like.
right.
So for the library ed tech, which is open, it says $30,000. So that's an all-in cost savings, benefits,
Yes.
insurance, everything.
Yes.
Yeah.
It all depends what that person chooses. If it makes a difference.
Well, yeah, but
They may not have health insurance.
with your budget,
if I
you got a
may,
budget
Katie?
for full
Yes,
family.
go ahead, Samantha.
We did not scrimp off health insurance because we were so tight with where we came in for the increase to health insurance and what our projections are. We did not
That's right. Thank you.
include the health
Thank you,
insurance
Samantha.
and cuts. Because if we have several election changes and people pick up full family as new hires, we're going to be very drastically over on health.
Thank you for the reminder on that. So it's the salary.
Right, that makes sense.
Yeah,
because
that makes more
I'm
sense,
looking at
yes.
it, a teacher, and I
Yeah.
know 65,000 for a teacher is not going to include benefits because contract's not going to allow that.
I'd forgotten that, so thank you.
Christy?
One other nuance as well, if they are currently filled positions, remember, we're still responsible to pay out July and August as well.
Okay.
So I have a request. Can we start with the non-position reductions, look at that professional development travel line, and talk about it as a group if we want to go with it or not? And then do the same for the non-position, just to keep us organized, because I feel like if we jump from, we're not going to come to a decision. So that first one is a $15,000 reduction. So would that mean that there's only $5,000 for professional development and travel left in that line?
So 20,000 was already reduced. And so of the total before was 35,000, so we have a differential. But we did leave some travel in there, correct, Samantha? We'd have to check that. We left like a little pocket there. If somebody found a free thing they wanted to go to, we would support them in that travel cost.
And I guess the question, how important is professional development and the supportive travel in morale and teacher satisfaction? Like, is this something that potentially would have people look at other districts because we don't have it?
I mean, not everyone does it, but yes, for some people who regularly take that as an opportunity, yes.
And who
we
has-
still have course reimbursement, so if
Okay.
they choose a course.
And who has say of whether or not they can access travel dollars?
So it would go through their administrator, and then the administrator would probably call us and say,
What do you
know,
have?
what do you have? But we would be looking at different pockets to try to help support them.
Okay. So with that answer, I'm comfortable with that
Is
reduction.
everyone else comfortable with that reduction? Ann?
It would be nice to see what we are actually going to spend instead of seeing just the proposed cost savings. Is it in the binder still?
So we're at the professional development and travel at the $15,000 reduction. I got a head nod yes from Robbie. I got a head nod yes from Christy. Diane. I heard somebody over here say yes. Nicole. Laura.
So the 20,000, so 35,000 total has been cut out of the original number from the binder, and that
Right.
leaves what number left?
Right. So that's
Yeah, okay.
Samantha would have to look that up because they're in all the different. They're all in the different buildings.
Mm.
Yes.
I just don't know too that like that end number is gonna get us.
You mean the total?
Yeah.
Mhm.
I don't know it's gonna really be enough, but
The 500,000.
yeah, and so like if we reduce another 351,000, that's a 5% increase, right? On the very last page, or I'm just concerned that sending that out, it's again not going to be supported. The numbers from the referendum vote, Litchfield was the yes votes were 35%, Sabattis was 39%, and Wales was 47%, with an overall average of 38% of voters that went out to vote. That's not like a 46, 54%. You know what I mean? It's not even close. And so my thought is, if that's, if I had to give you a number, some might want to plug their ears, but I don't know any more than like a 2% would be, and that's not like, I don't know that voters would support more than a 2 or 3%, because last year was a 1.5%.
Yeah. Yes. Last year was 1.5. Right. And
One,
what's
three,
happened
four.
now is now we're going even deeper.
Mm-hmm. No, I understand.
Yeah. I mean, you know the
Yeah.
impact. I don't need to say.
Right. So, I think, again, if I could give you $50 million, I would. But I think, some of the other things that we look at is maybe non-curriculum things. I think it's a tough budget, and I think, extracurricular I'm going to say it, sports, band, drama, all of those things, I think, you know, I don't think we get rid of them, but I think the ask might be, you know, this year, parents and guardians and caregivers and all of those people that have kids in those programs, we really need your help in stepping it up to help fund these. So you're going to have to fundraise a little more. You're going to have to do your part because the taxpayers, this is where we are at, you know, is just some of my thoughts around that. And then I know some other districts were looking at their special education out of placements and if there's opportunity to reduce costs by maybe bringing some of those programs back in. I don't know, not an option. We've looked at it and it's
Well,
not.
here's what's hard with that is you have to hire the staff. You have to provide the resources. So you're going to have to look at a group of students with similar needs to come back in. And then you want a program for them. And so to do that at this time would be very difficult. Would it be something that the new special ed director can start to explore for our next budget? Absolutely. No doubt about it. But you have to invest in order to bring them back in. And so that's the challenge on that one.
I think
And-
that makes a great point though too, is to invest and to invest. And that's what, you know, I think, and of course some people don't see it that way. It's, they don't have kids in the district or they don't, all those things. But I think highlighting some of those is very helpful. So, you know, we have these new things this year. These new things that we, and two, I know it's always like, it's a needs, not a wants, but sometimes it's great to put those wants there because you're going to have shiny new things to have. And then can you help me with what the state reimburses per student
For what?
for just enrollment?
It doesn't reimburse, it calculates.
So what does the state pay per student?
They pay 65%. We just did this in our consolidation meeting. Would I say 64?
54.4?
Yeah. So the state pays 64.44% of our ED 279 totals, and the local pays 35.56%. But remember, that's when it gets all calculated and then broken down.
How many, somebody else has things. How many students do we anticipate are enrolled next year? 13?
It's usually between 12,775 and it's usually around 1275, 12, and then up to 13.
So can we just say 13? Well,
If you want to say 1,300.
I know, it's like, gosh, put a number out there and say
I
it
wouldn't,
in
because I
stone.
feel like it's lower. I feel like that's the high end, Katie, 1275.
So I can add
Oh,
these.
1275, I think so.
What, for number of students?
Yeah.
It's
It was
on
12, it was the average of 1292 last year. They had 1305 in the October 22 account, and in October 23, it was 1279. So we had 1279 in October 2023. And so they take a 2-year average, so it was the
Right.
1229 was the average over the 2 years for the subsidy the state provides. They have a really nice form called ED 279, the Department of Education website, has all this information on how much they pay per student, how many students we have, how many
Awesome.
teachers were allocated for what our class sizes are.
So Bob, what's that number that they pay per student?
That's the one I was trying to find initially, because it's in several
They-
different places.
It's not how much the state pays, it's how much they allocate in the formula.
And how much is that per student?
You have to let me pull up the ED
Okay.
279.
Sorry, I wasn't looking.
That's okay, I don't know, I don't have them at the top of my head, but I am going to pull them up. Laura, can I go back to your sports extracurricular? Because, I mean, I guess we have to get down to the nitty gritty. Are you?
Do we want to approve all the ones that are on the list first before we go someplace else?
Okay, well, I was just getting clarification if she is saying to cut $588,000 from the budget and bring other instruction to zero. That's what I was asking. We can go back to that.
also of the list that we got.
Yes. That's where we were headed, was
Right.
doing the one at a time.
Right.
For
So
this list.
we kind of agreed
okay.
with the first one.
Yes. So then we're gonna move down to the next one, which is the field trip, which it's a reduction of 6,900.
So
I-
could, oh, sorry. You
You go first.
people could still, teachers or coordinators or anybody could still raise money for a field trip, right? This is just cutting this out of the budget. So they could ask for approval, they could raise money and, right?
Yeah, we would need to come up with a process on how that would work, yes.
Is this the total amount in the budget? Excuse me.
Yeah.
Or is this like
Right.
the professional development where there's still money in there? I'm confused about
No, it'd be the total amount.
It's all of it.
that. Okay, good.
So there'd be no field trips whatsoever.
And how much do we spend? How much did we spend last year it was 7,000 in our budget last year for field trips? I'm looking at you, Sam, but maybe look at the wrong person.
It was 13,900 in the budget, because we
Okay.
combined the two numbers, so we're taking those out.
Okay, so how much did we spend last year?
Yeah. So, go ahead.
I'd have to pull those specifics for you, but it varies year to year. And there was an additional ask this year because we didn't always have every grade level field trip budgeted for. So for equity, our principals were trying to put in an amount for each grade level to have a field trip at the younger levels.
If I may, I feel like $6,900 is a very small piece of this entire budget. And I think it's important to recognize that we have many students in our district that field trips are their only opportunity to go to the ocean or to see a museum or to go to a vernal pool in their own neighborhood. And I would hate to see that really important piece of classroom education, which happens outside of the classroom, be cut, when I think there's other pieces of our budget that we might want to consider rather than this.
Diane?
I agree. I don't think we should be cutting field trips. I think it affects, I mean, there are some things that affect.
Bring your mic a little closer, sorry.
I think there's something that we could reduce that would affect a larger group. I mean, we don't want to take it away from everybody. It's, for some kids, that's the only opportunity they get to do anything.
I'm good with it.
I hate to see it come out, but we've been trying to nickel dime this budget for several months, so here's another nickel to throw in the pot. So it's something we're gonna have to, it sounds like people wanna cut another $1 million from this budget. So we might as well take this $6,900 here and throw it in for the $1.5 million that they want.
I agree. I'm for it.
Removing it?
For removing it, yes.
Laura?
Oh, no, it's on, sorry. So just to clarify, people don't want to cut $1 million out of this budget. If I could, I think you're kind of referring to me personally, as I said, that looks like a challenging number. If I could give you $50 million, I would do it all day long. I do think that we have a lot of people that are creative and will still provide a great education to our students and will, I think we'll be able to fundraise and do some things. And they'll still, I know at the middle school, they go out and walk in the woods and learn and do things as well. So we might just get a little more creative with some of those things, but I'm for it.
Scott?
Yeah, just exactly what Laura just said. I mean, if I could make that $30,000 budget for field trips, I would, but I just don't see any proposed cuts in any other spots that are offsetting that to keep that in. So, I mean, these aren't my proposed cuts, but in order to get to a reasonable number, I think we have to. So,
Okay.
yep.
So that looks like that's all. All right, so then The next one would be, well, the books and things you already have taken that off, so that's not something that we have to discuss, because we've already done that. So down to the position reductions. So there's a lot on here.
So can I ask a clarifying question? I guess one of the questions I have is around the increase of travel, because I'm assuming that travel is going to be reimbursed for specialists that have to travel.
Their
to more than a
schedule
school?
would have them going to a different school each day.
So there won't be no
There'd be
increase in
minimal.
travel? Okay.
I mean, we're going to try to minimize the travel.
And then
Yeah.
do you have any idea in terms of like approximate dosage for our elementary school students? Because I know like at Carrie Ricker, this year, because I have a third
Mhm.
grader, he had a special every single day.
Mm.
So some weeks they would have art twice, and sometimes they would have music twice, and that's a really important piece of education. Again, we live in communities that kids don't have access to a library unless they travel outside. They don't have access to art or music, so school is the place that it happens. And then my other question is there a librarian or ed tech librarian that would do Carrie Ricker, Libby Tozier, SPS, or does that fall back to teachers?
No, there would be an ed tech for that, yeah. And so your question is, will Carrie Ricker feel different? Absolutely.
Or do you have like an estimate dosage of what students can expect?
It'll be once a week as
Once a
the
week
other
for each
school.
special.
hmm
Okay.
And pre-K would look differently. I think we're going to look at pre-K a little bit different.
Because right now pre-K has
Mhm.
no.
Yeah, I think they have a portion of it. So
Jam
we would look.
music.
Yeah, we would look at that, and yeah, and they know about, yeah. So we would empower those folks to create a schedule that they believe meets what needs to be met.
And all of our current specialists have positions
Correct.
in the district?
Yes.
Do you want me to go line by line of each teacher, or do we want to do this as a package here?
Package.
Right. Diane?
Yes.
Christine?
I'm not sure this is where people want to see cuts, but yes.
Robbie?
Yeah.
Tom?
Yes.
Nicole?
Yes.
Laura? Yeah. Scott?
Yep.
Then the next one is not a reduction. So we're,
Yeah, I think they took.
That was part of it.
oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So- So then,
And now it's a fund balance.
so now it's the fund balance. Discussion? Any thoughts? Nicole?
Now, can you explain the amount that we're putting in and if there was any, are we putting 129,900 additional
To the 400,000, yes.
to the
So
400,000 that was already talked about in prior conversation?
400 is already part of the one that you approved the first time.
So it's just an additional 129,900.
9, yes,
So the 400 was already in the 23 million
correct.
amount.
Well, it's not in the amount, remember, it offsets taxes, because this is the expenditures, and then we put 400,000 over here so that we collect 400,000 less from the taxpayers. So this 500, the goal was 500,000 reduction. So when we looked at what was left for reductions to meet a $500,000 reduction, we took from the fund balance.
So that was going to be my question, how we came up with the 129.9 as a sufficient amount or a reasonable
It was to make the,
amount.
it was between the 370, the 323, the 370, 100 to get to the 500,000. It was a difference.
Now, can you give me an actual number here? Is it in the table on the back? Because this graph doesn't give me a lot. I mean, it's a $500,000
Increments?
Thank you
Yes.
for that word. Can you give me an actual
Yes. So
amount?
do you want to go over fund balance, Samantha?
I just know this came up at the public meeting
Yep.
and want to make sure that we're taking as much as we can and should,
Mhm.
and but still obviously leaving what we need.
Yeah. No, great question. So our audited fund balance at the close of last year's audit was 1.437 million. And, oh, my computer just froze. We have already promised for this fiscal year, so the year that's closing in a couple of days here, 400,000 of that to balance. That will be used. We are trying to be cautious and careful with end of year so that we might have a little bit to put back in the pot and feel comfortable about promising the extra that Katie has on the table.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that number again so I can write it down?
The audited fund balance?
Yeah.
Yep. It is 1.437.
1.437.
Correct. Less 400,000, which is promised to balance this current fiscal year's budget, which will be used.
Minus 129.9.
Right, so how it works, so Nicole, you're right. So once that 400 goes, it will be about $1 million.
Mm-hmm.
So then once we allocate this, it'll be down to $500,000. And then whatever we put back in it, we'll build it back up. So next year's budget, so.
Wait, I'm sorry.
I sorry, I know. All right,
I'm
so
sorry. We're not going down to $500,000.
Okay, so we have, well, because.
The fiscal year ends June 30th.
Right, so we have a certain amount, right?
Yeah.
And then when we back that 400 out, we'll have $1 million, right? We'll have $1 million in the pot,
It hasn't been taken out yet for this year.
right? And then whatever we save coming out of this year, which we're targeting about the 129 to put it back in, okay? But then if we promise the $500,000
Mhm.
of fund balance for this coming budget, it would come out of that $1 million.
So what would be our landing number after the rest of the budget comes out and we allocate this $529.9?
$507,100.
Thank you.
And what does the state say we should have?
Well, that's something we're looking at too, because it gives a certain amount. Right now, we're at, you're going to have to remind me because I'm going blank. But we have to get to 5% next year's. We can't have more than 5%
Carryover.
for the following year. Yes.
5% of the budget number.
5% of the
Right.
budget number, correct. Mhm. So we'll be there, we'll be close to that, because that's what we've been calculating, is we have to be at the 5%.
Any other discussion? Okay. Diane, you're. I would agree. Kristen?
I support.
Good.
Bob?
Yes.
Nicole?
Yes.
Yes.
Scott? So then that takes us down to.
Brings us to 6.63%. To taxes, it's a 10% increase, so it's more than that, obviously, to the taxpayer, the savings.
Increase or decrease?
Decrease. It's because the budget is only reflecting the 370,100 reduction. But they're seeing more of a reduction in taxes because of the added fund balance. So they're seeing a 10% decrease in the amount of taxes that need to be raised in addition.
Could you show us the impact, like rough numbers of what the impact would be on taxpayers?
We
So like, you know how we always do at the end of our presentation, like a home that costs $200,000, a home that costs $3 or $4.
Yep.
I think that helps people to start to think about like, oh,
Mr. White, while you're working on that, you have it? Okay, go ahead.
All right, so if you pledge that additional fund balance and the cuts that you've talked about for Litchfield, and I'll do just give you the 100,000,
Yep.
and then you can use a multiplying factor. The estimated annual increase would be 8175. Sabatis 10907, and Wales 6876.
What was it before? Okay, there.
I think Litchfield was 146, that, 126, Litchfield was, Stratus was 124, I think, and Wales was,
Is Robbie around the?
yeah, I'm around.
He's in the ballpark.
Yeah, so Litchfield was 123.83.
There it is.
So 124.
Yeah.
Sabattis, I'll round up, it was 168.
Yeah.
And Wales was 111.
Spot on.
So it's bringing it down.
So now we're at that 6.3, and I know, Laura, you said that that's probably not going to be enough, and you want to have other discussions about other things. So if that's not where we're headed, then what are some of the things that we can keep going, or is
I mean,
this your
does anyone else think that the 6.63 is a number that the community would support?
I'm not sure. I mean, I think with the increase in the fund balance, it impacts more than what we've seen. So I'm hopeful, but last year's budget increase was 1.6, and it took us 4 tries, which also costs money. So.
Yeah, last year, even though the school budget didn't get approved, we still all got our taxes, and they went up whether it was, accordingly with the budget or not. It didn't impact that at all.
I mean, the other thing that nobody talks about is that our local budgets have also increased. So people are very quick to blame the school, but it's not just the district that's increasing taxes. I know it's a huge part.
So, there's a couple of things that I think that we could reduce from the budget. And that's some capital improvement dollars. So, maintenance, we need to maintain in buildings, but capital improvements, so I personally, I do not want to ask the residents of my town to contribute to capital improvements in a building that 2 years from now may be pulled out from under them. So, I would hope that Litchfield could put this whole thing to rest. And if it takes people that don't want to withdraw to take out a petition to withdraw, so that it goes through the process and goes to a vote and gets turned down, then that would put it to rest. Or maybe it gets approved. But somebody's got to fill out the petition, give it to the selectmen, and then the statute takes over, and it's a very short period of time between when they have to do their public hearing and have their first vote. If that was a yes approval, then it goes to a more lengthy one and state gets involved. If it's a no, that kind of ends it right there, and then we could continue on as RSU 4, knowing that there isn't enough sentiment in Litchfield to actually really withdraw, and so we don't have to worry about those things. But in next year's budget, and we never got to this because we couldn't get off Article 1 over the 6 weeks or whatever, but there was a capital improvement budget included. And for Carrie Ricker, it's $42,500. And for Libby Tozer, it was $48,000. So those two together are $90,500 in savings if we don't do those capital improvements on those two schools. And I can understand the Litchfield people not wanting to spend money for capital improvements on the schools in Sabattis, if they think in 2 years from now they're not going to be part of the district and their students are going to go there. So capital improvements maybe has to be put on kind of a hold until this thing can get fleshed out. It's the same thing with the consolidation committee. Information. We got a lot of information that will be coming over the next months that could shed a lot of light on where we really want to go with consolidation or school closures. We don't have it. And so if we looked at capital improvements, and I don't have the numbers for the other 3 schools, I apologize. I just took out the 2 in Litchfield. But maybe capital improvements is a place where it won't impact the day-to-day maintenance, so we can keep the buildings going and keep them in their current state, and hope that we don't have major failures. But that's what, that's why we keep a fund balance in case we need to fall back with an emergency. So I would suggest capital improvements be one area to be looked at. And then echoing comments that we have, we heard again tonight, but a couple of board members have talked about getting volunteers to run our co-curricular and extracurricular activities instead of paying stipends. I personally believe that if that's what would happen, we would not have any co-curricular or extracurricular activities, because I don't know how many volunteers are going to want to put in the hours it takes to coach a football team or a basketball team or a robotics or a Future Business Leaders of America or any of those others. So that would take cost center 4 at $600,000 or $620,000, because I don't think you would need any of that stuff, including an athletic director, because there wouldn't be any athletics, because I don't think you're going to get people to step up, invest that much time. I may be wrong, and that would be great, but you look around at every organization that functions on volunteers, and they don't have them, right? We're too busy with our own personal stuff, and I'm included in that as well to some degree. So, but that's a couple places that looking over the budget and cost savings, because, if we wanted to get if we thought that, if we really thought the 2% number was the number, we would have to go and cut $1,368,441 out of the budget that was approved at the budget meeting to get to 2%, or add more of the fund balance, but it's still a big number. It's a reduction in the overall. So that's the number to get to 2%. You can make it by adding revenues, or you can take it by decreasing expenses. But so those are my suggestions on areas to look at. As you all know, this is my last meeting. I'm going to be turning it over to Matt. If Matt's still here, so he's going to be part of this discussion starting next week, Monday. But
So
just my thoughts now.
Looking at the just so to give you more information. So looking at the 5-year capital improvement plan, there's the Verkada Access System grant. So that's the grant that we've applied for, so that we have more secure buildings. So if I looked at every single building and did not include that, there would be a reduction of $85,500. So when you look at the high school, and this is on, I know some of you have your computers, some of you don't, but it's on the Consolidation Committee website. But at Oak Hill High School, it was planned to replace exterior doors for $15,000, and for floor machines at $15,000. So you total that up, you've got $40,000. So I might have added wrong. $40,000. So add. And then nothing at Oak Hill Middle School. And then SBS was, because at the middle school was the Verkada. And then SBS, you could reduce the gym door replacement. That was on that for SBS. Carrie Ricker was the exit entrance doors for $17,500. And then Libby Tozier, it was the water softener system replacement and building signage. Yeah, chime in. Go ahead.
Am I on
Because
here?
we're just
Okay.
looking at your numbers here.
Yep. So Bob, great suggestions. I think it's important to note too, though, that just because it's on the 5-year capital improvement plan doesn't automatically mean it gets inserted into the budget. Because as you see, you go into FY 25, 6, 26, 7, so on and so forth. Those would be kind of crazy numbers to bump the repair maintenance lines up. You would see exponential raises or percentages increase to those lines. Something that just from a budget we couldn't support. We would have to go to bond, grant, so on and so forth. So they're acting as placeholders with cost estimates, so I can keep a good eye on, all right, in a year, in 5 years, what are we looking at? What are we roughly talking in cost? Is that something we can introduce in the budget? A lot of the things in the column, the FY 24-25, are placeholders within the current budget, so there are places for reduction. I've been a big proponent of the COPS grant, the Department of Justice grant that is going to require a percentage match from our local dollars. That, of course, I believe is board approved upon award. There is also the possibility of the the match, the percentage match to be reduced significantly or eliminated altogether from the Department of Justice if we can prove financial hardship. So just because that money's there doesn't necessarily mean we'll use it, but it's a placeholder there certainly for these big projects. And so I just want to make sure that folks know that in like FY 25, 26, so the next budget that we work to build, I'm not looking to bump the, we'll take Libby Tozier, I'm not looking to bump the repair maintenance line 1.2 million. That would be unfathomable. But it's just, there as a placeholder. So,
But are those numbers not included in this year's budget for the fiscal year 24 or fiscal year 25 capital improvements, because that's what the budget presentation shows?
So yeah, so for FY 24-25 on the 5-year capital improvement plan, a majority of those are, which are the Verkada access systems, because we do need a percentage match to proceed with that grant, assuming we don't get reimbursed for financial hardship. Some of the other things, like for instance, we had a couple entry-exit doors at Kerry Ricker. We were able to address those with some end-of-year funds, things like that, just to again get ahead of an increasing budget line. But I would say if you go school to school, certainly the Verkada access system, those dollars are in this year's budget. I can tell you the water softener system replacement is not in this year's budget, even though it is in this year's 5-year capital improvement plan, only because that's coming due soon. Again, I could add and add and add to this list. I'm trying to be mindful and cost conscious. I can't bump a repair line 50, 60, 70,000 per school. It wouldn't ever pass.
Right, I understand that, but
yep.
From the budget presentation for that particular article, or number 9, cost center 9, the budget, I believe, when I read the presentation, put a link to the capital improvement plan for the dollars. So I take that to mean the numbers that were in the fiscal year 25 capital improvement plan, or those numbers are built into the budget numbers for fiscal year 25. Now, we don't have the grant yet, so if we don't get the grant, we'd have this money in the budget line as if we're going to do it without the grant. So, but so the numbers are there. So that's why
Yep.
I'm saying if we take those numbers out, if we do get the grant, then that doesn't really impact the budget, because it's, except for the matching funds, whatever those are. So it's, we don't put every expenditure that we use grants are not in the budget, or we'd have a $45 million budget or something like that, right? All the title money and everything else that comes in. So again, we've added those in. We're hoping we get a grant. If we don't get the grant, those numbers are baked into the budget. So that's a budget reduction number for that system that can come out. And if we know the percentage, then that's the only amount that should appear in that budget cost center.
Yep, the 25,000 though per school is assuming we get the grant and are paying the matching amount in full as required. Again, there is the possibility of, if we show some financial hardship, that can be reduced to little to nothing, but that's not up to us, that's up to the DOJ. So the numbers you see, Bob, yes, correct. They're in the budget as it is presented. It is something that you could reduce. But if we were to get the grant and they say, no, you have to do the 25% match as requested, then if we take those funds out, then we won't be able to support the project. But again, that is something you could reduce.
So that's just the 25% match that's in that amount, is just the match?
Yeah, correct.
So we're talking several $100,000?
It's a costly project, correct, which or 75% of the project would be covered by the Department of Justice, or more, again, if they decide we're not going to ask you for that match.
So, John, I'm going to give you a little time to think, because we can talk about other things while you're thinking. Can you look through those numbers and see, is there an amount you could, based on what you're hearing, would recommend that possibly could be reduced?
Specifically to the repair and maintenance
To the
lines per school?
Yes.
Or,
to
or
capital
as it pertains to the
improvement
capital?
plan.
Okay.
Yep, that's what I'm hearing.
Sure.
Yep. So he has to work on that for a minute.
Right.
I'm trying to understand the 6.63 and a 5. Why we have 2 line items here and we're only talking about the 6.63. Although I will say I don't think 5's okay, and I'm not going to make friends here either. But I'm going to say the quiet thing out loud. We need to flat fund, and we need to make cuts, and the cuts are not going to be fun. Nobody wants to be in this economy, but I don't know that 100, and I know everybody's like, well, it's only $100 over a year. My parents cannot afford another $81 a year. The majority of our community are elderly, they're seniors, they're on fixed budgets. As it pertains to what we're cutting, I do know that there are a lot of volunteers in our community because the community will stand up and will take care of our children, where we're trying to alleviate the financial hardship for those who can't. I mean, I'm willing to sponsor a student who needs to go on a field trip, do a GoFundMe, which I do give Send Go, I don't do GoFundMe. Have a bottle drive, have a collection, do things like that. It's doable. I had to pay for all my field trips when I went to school. My parents did. But they can't afford another $82. I think we have to be drastic. So I am curious, because my vote is for, and I said it at another meeting, I think it needs to be 20 million, not 21, which is going backwards. I know it's an unreasonable ask. I don't think we should hire a director of transportation yet when we don't know if we have the budget funds. I know that we're worried about people wearing many hats. I don't know how many times to say it though, like when people have to pick up other responsibilities. And I think, Katie, you mentioned that at the onset of the meeting. You know, you had to learn something that Kathy did, right? I think that just has to happen. The workforce is dwindling. We don't have the people out there to hire, but we can't keep adding to it. So if you were to ask me a number, I would say flat fund and not go backwards, and I would say $21,577,585.37. But I am curious. My original question. I mean, I don't think it's enough, but I'm curious as to why we have a 6.63 and a 5 in this table.
So I debated whether I'd put that there, to be honest. To be complete transparent, I heard 5%. I wanted to show you what it would take to get to 5%, right? So you at the last meeting said no direction, none. So you didn't say, come back with $1 million worth of cuts, come back with $2 million worth of cuts, come back with, I had to make decisions with no guidance. So tonight, you're supposed to have a number. I can tell you if you bring this down to, it won't pass. I mean, we'll just be back here again. Because when people see what it takes to take $1 million, people will come back and vote it down. So we're back here to find the happy medium, to be honest. Because we're getting into positions now. 80% of this budget is people. And I know you say about director of transportation, that was not a huge addition. What would be a huge addition is adding a food service director, which every district has. Every district. So one person said, I will do the food service, like you said, add that hat, but we need a transportation director, which was a $12,000 difference. So we were trying to be fiscally responsible in meeting the demands of the district. So if we go down the pathway of everybody getting direction, then we have to discuss whether we're going to have people running the district. And teachers teaching in the classrooms, and because when people hear, oh, your class size, don't complain about class sizes. because there's only so many bodies we're going to be able to cut, and then what's left, people aren't going to support it. So I think what you have to find is, what do you believe is the best education for students in a fiscally responsible, which is what I've been saying all along. So tonight, I put the 5% because I thought somebody would ask, well, what if we went to 5%? And I was like, well, that would be a $351,000. I don't know how I'd reach that. We have not brainstormed how would we get there, because I really don't know how we get there, except for on the floor again, we're going to get cut in the maintenance and facilities line. So if you want to do that tonight and say, take another $100,000 out of the finance and facilities, then we'd have to do it. If you want people to pay to play, then you take that and say people are going to pay to play now. But people are going to have a hard time coming to this district and not going to districts where they don't pay to play. So there's a lot of consequences for actions. And tonight, we put out there that we're going to go to referendum. I don't know if you're going to be able to come tonight unless everybody agrees to go to another referendum and be prepared for it to pass or fail. And then we go to another referendum. I don't have a problem with that. If you stand by where the budget should be and they vote it down, then we come back again. So that to me is, we're listening, we're trying to respond, we're cutting 10% to that tax impact with this proposal. If they want more, then we tackle it the next referendum. I just think we're having discussions that should have been had, and now we're 3 weeks away from, or 4 weeks away from the next referendum. So that's my feeling.
Yeah, well, I understand everybody wants to pay less, and I get it. But the point I made to Katie when I called her up this week and asked her, and I told her what my recommendations would be for the budget and thanked her for the work that she had done. And I was happy with the number that she got us down to. The taxpayers at the budget referendum meeting did not cut this budget. And it's their budget, not ours. We recommended a budget. We left that meeting with the taxpayers' recommendation. All the other taxpayers shot it down in referendum. So we come back with another recommendation. We go to another budget meeting. We present our recommendation again. It's up to the taxpayers at that meeting to decide what they're willing to pay for education in these three towns. Then it goes out to referendum again. Our budget is a recommendation of what it takes to run our schools. If somebody wants to stand up and say they want to take $1 million out of education line one, and it gets voted, we have to deal with what is left. No matter what they came out with. We have to deal, and we've done that in the past, haven't we, Bob? Dealt with what was given to us at that referendum. And then in that budget meeting, then it goes to referendum, passes or fails. I've seen them pass for too many cuts. I've seen them fail for too many cuts. So, all right, let's get to a number. You want to take another $1 million out? What's your ideas? Let's hear them. You want to cut staff? You want to cut superintendents? You want to cut assistants? Let's hear them. I'm willing to sit here all night and listen. But I don't hear anything coming back. All I hear was, I think it's too high. Okay. Let's hear 'em.
Hang on, Diane had it first.
Absolutely. Having been a teacher in this district for 36 years, I've seen the budget and I've seen the issues every year, year after year. I've had my salaries frozen many times. Even though other things went up, I had a frozen salary. We had supplies cut. There were many cuts. We went years with no art teacher, music teacher. It was really bad. And if we continue to cut the money to repair our schools, we can't do that anymore. We need to repair them. They need to be fixed. like our own homes. We don't let it go to the point where we can't do anything anymore. I think the reason why our schools are like they are is because we haven't been doing that. We need to do that. It's important that our kids are in a safe environment. And I think that is as low as I think I would go. I would not cut it any more than that. What's being cut tonight is more than I would want to cut. And I have grandchildren in this school, and yeah, I don't want to pay any more. My husband and I are going to be collecting, I'm collecting my retirement, my pension, and my husband's on Social Security. So yeah, we're in a budget too. But I want what's best for the kids in this district, not just my own grandchildren, but everybody else. I've had a lot of the parents here. I've had their kids. So I want what's best for our kids. And if we continue to cut this, every year they're going to want to cut it again and cut it again and cut it again. We need to stop. It needs to go, we need to pass it. We need to say that it's important. This is what it needs to be.
Yeah, so I'd just like to follow up. I've tried to give recommendations. I feel like that was personally directed at me. I don't think that was appropriate given the fact that I actually spent time line by line talking with everybody here several times, as well as Sam outside of our meetings. Granted, it was only once, but I did go through. We did try. I was told line by line was micromanaging. So if 6,900 is enough to help reduce the field trips, if that's enough to help reduce the field trips, then 12,000 is enough to help reduce the budget overall, right? We can't say $6,900 is okay because it goes, like Bob said, another nickel in the bucket. If $6,900 is okay to consider, well, 12,000 from a director of transportation position is enough to consider. What I think is what I'm hearing, what I'm expressing, rather, I will say, is what I'm hearing from the community. $100 is not going to hurt me, okay? It's not. It's going to hurt the elderly. It's going to hurt the senior citizens who cannot make any more money. And when you said, Diane, that you had frozen salaries, that's the economy we're living in. My company is not doing merit increases. They're not doing bonuses. They're doing their 5th layoff in a year. We don't want to lay anybody off. We want to keep everybody that we can employed. We have to look at everything else, is where I tried to start back in February. Yes, we did not get very far. A lot of those line items did not get discussed. Plain and simple, we didn't do it. We didn't go line by line. We keep telling the public to show up to go line by line. They're not going to show up. I have been told multiple times they are going to speak at the polls. They are not going to show up to the public vote. They are not going to voice their opinions or concerns then. They're telling us, we elected you, you figure it out. And then they're going to speak at the polls. And that is what they've shown us. And I'll do this as many times as I need to as well. I don't have a magic number. I don't think anybody does. Nobody has a magic number. Nobody knows if they're going to have a job in a week. My own company, I don't know if I'm going to continue to have a job tomorrow, next week, in a month, because they are continuing to do layoffs. I think that's hanging over everybody's heads, as is the fact that our homes are also falling apart. But we don't kick the can down the road like a lot of the school boards did, which is what the public said. I'm repeating their words, right? So we have to pick up those pieces. But I also can't, like Bob said, I can't put in money into 2 schools that we may not even have in 3 years, right? These are big decisions, huge decisions. And I don't know that any of us are qualified to make it. We're guessing. We're guessing. We're doing the best that we can. But we have to think of everybody as well as the taxpayers and the students. And if we were able to give them a proper education on 1.34, I was looking at Kittery's budget. I was looking at all over the state. It's insane. Millions and millions and millions and billions of dollars every day for all of these schools. Something's wrong across the country. Something's wrong. We want to keep teachers as much as possible, but I think we have to figure out how to make more cuts. That was just my opinion. But if we want to put this 6.63, which I had two numbers again. So the one we got a couple weeks ago was
6.63%, because remember I sent you a revised one because I took the fund balance and put it in the wrong place.
So that's why the 6 and 6.3 is
Right.
different.
That's right.
So, if we want to, I know we need it. I'm not denying that. We need it. Our schools are falling apart. But I have a kindergartner and a third grader. So, I'm invested too. I think we all are. But we also have parents and family and friends who are trying to decide if they fix their home or eat. That's just where we're at. So I did try to give recommendations. I can give more recommendations. If we go forward tonight with a 6.63, I'm probably going to vote against it again. I don't think that's enough. I don't think our community is happy. We have the test scores to prove it. I know there was a lot of commentary about the analysis and the evaluation and the perspective and perception of those test scores. But when we have a presentation 6 months ago about how well we're doing with these test scores, and then we see this, something happened. They're going to ask, what happened? You have a committee to figure that out. We're working on it. But that's a lot of what they're saying too. So I'm not going to go for 6%, 6.63. I'm willing to give you ideas. And I think, this is my opinion, that every line item can be cut and you don't have to go big dollars all in one fell swoop. Thank you. Well, I don't think we need 60 copiers. I don't think we need the funds for, there was some funds set aside for, gosh, it was a secondhand place.
Share center? I said that.
Yeah, right, exactly. I don't know that we need an SRO. We only had her half the year. I don't know that we need, I just had another idea. Oh, travel and reimbursement and training. I'll tell you what, my company is not sending anybody for training. You're not getting it. If it's not free or you can't go online, you're not going. They do that every year. Every company does it. In corporate America, they've been doing it for years. I've been there 22 years, 23 years, something like that. Every year it's, training's gone. But you can go free and you can go virtual. So many things are Zoom now. How many technology apps do we have? There was a huge list on one of our presentations that Katie provided us in March, maybe. How many do we pay for? What is the benefit? What is the value? So I can give you all the ideas, but I get a lot of rebuttals. But I don't know what you guys have in that. I don't know what the added value is. I don't know what the benefit is. We have PowerSchool, we have IXL, we have Seesaw. I'm not a fan. It's very unuser friendly. We have, what else is another one I use? Or Infinite Campus. Is that still one?
No.
Okay.
PowerSchool took over.
PowerSchool took over? I've never accessed PowerSchool as a parent. I know. Isn't that amazing? I have no idea how to do it. I have IXL. I thought I needed it. It told me nothing. We have so many things that can be looked at. I think Kathy was looking into the fresh fruits and vegetables grant or, those are the things. That's the out of the box thinking that needs to be done. This is a hard decision. It's a hard time. Nobody is discounting that fact. Not one of us. And I have no desire to cut anybody's livelihood or job or role in the district. Zero. And my husband is a coach. He volunteers. Like, we try to do what we can. I donate all my bottles to, I have more. I'll bring them to anybody. I donated them all to M&T when they did the middle school trip. Those things are there. We can do those. We can all come together and do those, but that's going to save the people who can't afford this. And I think there are ideas, and I think that there are ways. And there are other line item things that I could give you. Absolutely. I don't think we need to be traveling from school to school all the time. My team is in Pennsylvania, Ohio, Texas. Not one, well, no, I lied. There is one in Maine. She's in Augusta. We're on Teams all day long. Video all day long. No, your central office people, or, you can have one-on-ones with teachers, or, you don't have to drive from school to school. I'm still opposed to a courier. You have ways to go about it, to do confidential documents and sending, and it's there. Now, maybe it's not free, but maybe it's cheaper. I don't know. But those are the things that I brought up last year, but I don't think anybody looked into them for this year. I tried to get into them for the line item discussion. We couldn't get that far. If you want to go line by line, I'll happily sit one-on-one with Sam, Katie, Christy. You want to join Diane? Absolutely. Happy to do it. But I don't know what's in those line items either. I have ideas. I know what they're called. But I don't know what they are either. So I'm told, well, that's not okay. We can't do that. We need that. We need this. I'm at a loss then. I don't know what else to offer. But I'm happy to do it again. Because I know it's not an easy job. I know that. I appreciate the time that you're putting into it, Katie and Sam. I'm sure you are. I don't know who else would be. I would like to recognize you personally, but
Everyone.
all the
All the
administrators.
admins, yeah.
Yes, yeah, I could not name all of you, sorry. Not all that quickly, but I do. I really do appreciate what you've done, how you do things. My children love school. I want to keep these schools open. That is my goal. And I think we can do it. It's a tough call to action. But I think we need to stop the finger pointing, stop the defensive comments, myself included, because we get heated, because we're adults and we're human. We need some of that RIT. Who wants to?
RTI.
Thank
RTI.
you. See, I'm horrible at acronyms.
I think it's PBIS.
PBIS is more likely though.
I mean, let's. We
So
need something.
I do have to kind of mimic Nicole's response as well. And I think I do feel it's this side, that side of the table a little bit in this conversation as well. I would like to remind this board that 813 voters voted no on this budget. It's not.
How many voted yes?
498 across 3 towns of a population of 9,722 with 6,849 voters. Our statistics also showed that we had 1,305 kids enrolled. I don't know nowadays, but my education, it took 2 people to make one of those. So if you double that, 2,600 people, and we had a total of 1,131 at the polls. So again, I would just like to remind this board that 813 people, that was 357 in Sabattis, 327 people in Litchfield, and 129 people in Wales voted no on this budget. So you can sit here and say, Laura wants $1 million cut, Laura wants a 2%, Laura wants all these things. I don't matter in this picture of things. It's these 6,849 voters, these 813 people that 38% only supported this budget. That's where we're at. So, and I don't think, you can sit here all day, you can sit here all summer. You can do the exact same thing we did last year. What I'd like to think is that we learned something from it. What I like to think is that you're hearing the towns are frustrated. It costs money. It continues to cost money to do these polls. And then when you keep on just going and going and going and not, and we did the other thing at the budget meeting. I don't know because I didn't bring that book with me. But can you help me with how many community members showed up to that? Was it 63?
Not many.
Okay, again. So, yes, they approved 60, we'll say 70. And I mean, YouTube, don't put that number in the paper. We'll say 70 people were at that meeting. And I think that's very generous of what was there. But again, out of 6,849 voters, less than 100 people were at that meeting. And those are the people, and it didn't pass by a lot at that meeting, but it did pass. And that's what went to vote. And then this is where, because again, I think people, they stand there in the meetings and they don't feel heard and they don't feel all these things. And then to sit here and say, we'll spend every day all summer doing it. That's not the message that we want to build our community to support our education of our students. It's just not where we should be encouraging or want to go with it. So I'm at the position, we tried talking about the budget. I've tried talking about the budget a few times, and I can't have a crystal ball or tell you what that number is. I can't tell you the quality of education that is a number. Again, I could give you $50 million. My thing. I need a bigger table. I would, but it's not realistic either. And so I just hope that, I personally kind of am like, well, I kind of told you so often. I don't know. I do hear a lot in the community, and I as well tell people, contact the superintendent. There's a resource, post a question. And I know sometimes questions are challenging to answer, and I completely, as in a leadership position, understand sometimes you want to say one thing and you say another because that's what you do. And so I think that sometimes people feel like that's not enough as well. So
I'm not sure what you're getting at right now, Laura.
some of the questions people don't feel are answered.
Do you mean on the FAQ?
Yeah.
Oh, they have been answered.
They don't feel they've been answered. They feel they are tiptoed around and they're not really answered. So I say, if you don't think your question's answered, reach out to the superintendent all the time. And so I think there's always creative ways, but I do think, and I don't think it's going to get easier. And I think that, there's opportunities for fundraising and for other things. So I think some of these are, the communication is, it's a tough budget. We hear it. The community isn't supporting it. We come to these meetings and spend hours away from our families, away from other things that we would all like to be doing, I'm sure. And I think to sit here with this board and some of the comments that have been made, I think are not appropriate at all. And I will be following up with a letter to this board on that. But my ending comment is, we can go through the public meeting. It's going to be tough in the summer as well, because I know not even probably 100 people will show up, but again, I don't have a crystal ball. And I think we're doing a disservice by continuing to expect voters to support something that they're not even close on.
Okay, all points well taken. So we're at the decision point. We need a number. So somebody give us a number that they think would be right, and then, as has happened in the past and happened in the beginning of this budget, we came up with a number to shoot at, and then we left it up to the administration to come back with that number. So this would be the board giving a number for the budget to present. What goes in that is then it's going to be up to the administrative team to make the cuts where they feel they can make it. For us to be able to do it, I don't think we could do it in the time. All depends on the number, right? I mean, maybe it's only another 100,000, maybe it's something else, but we need somebody to put out there a number that they would like the budget to be at. And I mean, you mentioned 2% because people in the town, you thought 2% would support it. So that's the $1.368 million cut from the current, the one that was approved at the budget meeting, in order to get to 2%. So if that's the number that you think it's going to need to be in order to pass, then the number should be $22,009,139. And then that will give you a 2% increase. And then it will be up to the administration to find another $1.3 million to go and cut the budget. There was one gentleman that got up and wanted to remove all additional funding because he didn't think we should pay any more than what the state said that we should have. Well, that would be 26 teachers because the ED 279
So Jill, can we,
authorizes 105, but we have 131 teachers and admins. So that would be 26 positions there that would need to go at least, plus all the sports in that, because that's not in ED 279. There's a lot of stuff that's not in ED 279. So, you know, that was one person's number. Fortunately, that didn't pass. But Caddy needs a number. We need a number. I'm not sure exactly. I tried to look at it, but I couldn't. It's been an upgrade on my phone, and search doesn't work right anymore for me. I'll figure it later. But how many days do we have by statute before we have to have another either budget meeting or referendum? Because the statute gives you X number of days once one fails. All right?
45.
45.
Is it 45? 45 for the next referendum?
Yeah.
All right, so then you have to have the budget meeting, I think, 10 days prior to?
They like to have. Yeah.
Right, so, I mean, I think that's at least 10, that's the latest you can go, I think, is 10 days before the referendum is the budget meeting.
Mm-hmm.
We
Yeah.
try and do it sooner, but, so we're already 2 weeks into the 45 days. So, you know, you have about 20 days to have a number. Well, no, you need more, because you have to publicize it. You got to publish it. So you got 10 days. So if you don't come up with a number now, then I can come on July 3rd as a spectator and watch you deal with it next week, Wednesday, to come up with a number. All right? But, so those who don't think that this number is going to be legitimate, give us the number.
Okay. Laura had her hand up. Do you want to go to Sam first? Can I go to Sam first?
Sure.
Okay. Sam?
Before, you had asked John and I to look and see if there were any more nickels that we could find in the capital improvement plan. So, do you want to speak to that?
So in the capital improvement plan, we talked about some exterior doors being replaced due to some deterioration that we found to be a little bit worse than we thought. We tried to act on it sooner than later, and of course, with a consideration of safety first, fire egress, lack of being able to lock, things of that nature. So anyways, so we came up with a few doors that we were able to take care of with end of year funds. So with that said, we are able to reduce $47,500 from across all 3 schools that we talked about. So cost center 8, and that number again is $47,500.
I'd like to just kind of maybe check in at where people are at on the board. If they're at the 6.6, they're at the 5, I threw out a 2, and what's your name?
Nicole.
Did a 0.
Robbie?
Yeah, I've heard two numbers. I've heard a flat funded budget and a 2%. I think we ought to get a consensus on that, like Laura said, and see where we stand. Because it's up to the consensus of the board, not one person.
Diane?
I have some community members that are texting me. They said, how about if we do a 6%? How much would we have to take out, Katie, to be a 6%?
Samantha? She has the formulas.
It's like, I don't want to do that, but
So
I think maybe it's great they could show up. I think that's kind of taking a public comment during a meeting. If I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I think if we stick with the 6.6, the 5, the 2, and the 0, because that's what our board member discussion has been. I think
5 and
I mean, we could put in 6, 6.25. We could put in 10. But I think for the purpose of this,
I'm getting that. Thank you. All right, so for the I can't really see very well today. 6.63. Okay. Thumbs up for yes, thumbs down for no.
So there's 47,500 more that's been identified. Do we want to include that in?
We have to have consensus for that.
That was capital improvements?
Did you put the 47.5 in there?
well, that'll be in your fat, like essentially
What?
your fat.
Yeah, can you give us a number with the 47.5?
so that will be with a new percentage.
Yeah, I think she's going to put in and then tell the percent.
That's 6.41%.
So now you have 6.4.
You're confusing me. 6.4 is what I wrote. Is that correct?
Yeah, 6.4.
Okay.
6.41.
She just kept it at 2 decimals because the other one's at 2 decimals.
Right. Okay. So are we willing to take that into account? Because then we have to get that consensus that that's where you want to go.
Yeah.
Right? So it's either the 6.63, 6.41, 5, or 2, or none. So
6.4.
Diane is
6.4.
6.4. Okay. Christy? 5. Robbie?
6.4.
Bob?
6.4.
Nicole?
0.
I am at the 2, but I would compromise on the 5.
Scott?
I would be at a 0 unless we can find some place to cut. Then I would be willing to go to like 2, 3, or 4, something like that. 2, I guess. But 0 until we find the correct cuts.
And I would be 6.41. That makes sense. Well, that, we have to get the number, then the next one is the motion. So, Robbie?
I know this is putting everybody under the gun, but what would a 0 and a 2 mean?
0 is 1.4 million.
Right.
Do you want to tell what a 2% would be? A reduction?
I had that number. That was
Somebody said it.
Did you have it?
1.368.
1.368.
So right now, the consensus is the 6.41.
Per weighted. Because it's going to be
We have
weighted.
to take a vote if
So-
we can get it, I don't know.
So you really kind of need to know who's where. because-
Well, a consensus really is like everybody, right?
Or
Like it's
majority.
not. So you're just kind of
so
taking a.
I'm just doing like a majority kind of, and it was Diane, Robbie.
So this is to vote on the number to send
Yes.
to the. So my question would be that there's 3 people, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 people right now on this board, and there's 3 that are for the 6.1, 2 for the 5, and 2 for the less than 5. So would there be a consensus from this board for this meeting that is anyone willing to compromise on their original decision, knowing what the numbers of the vote are now? To agree on a number to send to stay on our timeline, our aggressive timeline of sending something to the taxpayers. Is there anyone willing to budge?
I mean, that's why I went with 5. Because
Right.
in my heart of heart, I would want to support the 6.41, but listening to half of my board say 0 or less, I feel like 5 is the compromise.
I also feel like people that kind of get raises in their positions and jobs and things, they kind of normally get like a 3% kind of cost of living or something. So I think as close as we can kind of get to that number, I mean, it's all a guess. Again, like with a 40 or a 62% no vote, like I just don't know. It still will be enough, but
I think the challenge is healthcare isn't in that 3% rate. So an actual 3% cost of living is probably closer to the 3% cost of living when you bring in benefits is more like an 11 to 15% increase-ish.
Right. I mean, if you think of some of the expenses that are outside of our control, right? Health insurance, which is our second biggest bill. Our health insurance is going up 12% just about this year. That is substantial. Special ed costs. So the special ed costs that we are obligated by state statute to pay, that cost center is going up close to $500,000. You know, so when you think about flat funding, other things too, like insurance is going up 15%. That's definitely a lot higher than a 3% COLA. When you think about those costs that we have to have, we can't not have liability insurance, we can't not have property and casualty insurance. There are things that are outside of our control going up substantially higher than COLA. We have staff increases that if you want to keep things status quo, like those costs are rising. And so if we're going to cut to a flat fund, then you're going not just backwards, but significantly backwards in staffing.
I'm just thinking too, like with like people with jobs outside the district, like me. Do you know what I mean? Like people, because in Sabatis, according to the statistical census, for 59% are employed, Litchfield 65%, Wales is 60%. So like those people that we're asking, and like seniors and things, they're not getting those 3% increases and things either, but like these people that live in our district that we're asking for these increases on, when they're getting 3% or no percent, some people are getting no percent increases and things too. And I just think that if we can stay closer to some of those numbers, and then I really do think I am guilty in my professional life with it. When you live things every day, you guys live in the district every day. Sometimes when we are doing presentations, we almost could highlight some very specific things to help educate people, like almost like a sales pitch. Do you know what I mean? We could maybe do a little bit better job of that, and I can share some thoughts as well on that to highlight the shiny new things. Like people want to know they're making that valid investment, and that there's new programs and there's new opportunities and there's all these great things for our kids, because you only have essentially kind of that 2 hour, I think it sometimes goes 2 hours, right, or longer, that 2 hour window to make this sales pitch, to change those 70 people that show up to that meeting. And then the people that don't and go out to the polls, those other 700 people that went out to the polls, who knows what information they really had. It's not in the paper. They don't have kids in the district. They don't have a sign. I don't know. But I don't know really how to change their vote either, to encourage them to support that budget. So I just think getting a little more creative with the promotion aspect of it. I was saying too, it's kind of challenging because kids aren't in school, but if we could send home a half a sheet of paper with every single kid and say, you know, this is going home with you, the vote is tonight or the vote's tomorrow or things like that. I don't know. Is it worth the couple $100 in paper to get people with invested interest specifically in it? So back to my first thing is, would people knowing what the vote is now move their vote from 5 to 6.4, move their vote from 6.4 to 5, and same with the 2 and the 1, 0, would you move your vote? Would you consider compromising on your vote?
So do you want to let people answer first and then you come back to me? Or, because I don't want to steal her. I have a question that I'm going to ask a hard question.
Ask your question.
All right, I'm sorry. I don't want to steal your thought out there, but I'm going to ask that hard question. So yes, our health insurance went up 12%. Have we considered a share cost with them, with the employees?
They do.
Not just for other family members. I'm talking about for their own individual coverage.
All of our coverage options right now are negotiated in contracts. So the only contract that is open in negotiations right now, but almost closed, is ESP. I feel like we're nearing the end of negotiations, but everything else is set and typically in a 3-year term. So those percents of coverage are arranged in that contract negotiations.
So our contracts cover
Yep. So
how
the-
much we are going to pay for their.
Yeah, so outside of the typical negotiation cycle, the association would have to agree to open a contract and to negotiate those benefits. I don't want to speak for them, but I'm guessing the likelihood of that, since that's a benefit that they
Oh, I'm sure
enjoy,
nobody
you
wants
know?
to do it, and they're not.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to agree to it, right? Like so I said, it's a hard question. It's a tough question. I mean, my insurance premium went at 20%. I'm in the private sector. I don't have I might get a 3% increase, but when you're getting 3% for your wages, and your household bills are going up 10%, I don't know. Then your taxes are going up 3%. You're already underwater 7. So, sorry, Laura. Your question: is anybody willing to compromise? And it's I don't want to say that I'm not willing to compromise, like, 'cause I don't feel like that's the. I heard a lot of chatter about this school board and why we approved it. This school board.
The budget?
And why we approved it, yes, right? So it's not about not compromising from a 0 to 5. It's about it's all speculation. We have no idea. We have no clue.
Well, I mean, you're just going to use the statistical, like some data and some conversation and kind of put together your best guess. So, but we can't go with, like, where's that paper you had? So we can't
book?
say, we can't go and put this book together, right? This thing. And we can't say, Diane wants this number.
I know, exactly.
Christy wants this number. Robbie wants this
So-
number. So then taxpayers, you vote on which one you want. Like, we can't do that, right? So
I mean, am I willing
at
to
8:40,
agree that we could propose
right.
a 5%? I mean,
Are you moving your number?
I don't know. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I mean, I'm at 0, but I would be willing to compromise if I knew where the cuts were going to be. Like, I just don't understand why central office is off the table. I mean, based on, this just looks like a list of excuses. How's a bus depot? You're not going to fit a fleet of buses in this lot. Like, that's just an excuse. Park them at the high school. Park them at the, I don't know. Figure it out. It just sounds like there's no flexibility, and you don't want to give up your space. And this one-time savings of $41,000, no. You're talking about heat, electricity, water, all the other things involved in maintaining a building. It's not just $41,000. This is an endless number over and over and over again. Another thing, why are we always cutting from the bottom? I see these cuts from art teachers. Where's my list? right here. Music teacher, PE teacher,
But they're not.
ed techs. Like, why is it always from the bottom? Why are there never? I haven't in the months and months of discussion. Where are the budgets from cuts from the top? Always from the bottom. Time and time again. This is getting ridiculous. I mean, I just did my calculation for this 6.8, 6.63 or whatever it is. That's another $240 out of my pocket for my taxes. I'll be blunt. And I just got my evaluations went up $1,500. So now I'm at $1,700 over where I was before. I have friends that live in Auburn. Now I'm going to be paying the same amount as a person in Auburn. I don't have a full-time fire department. I don't have a full-time police department. I maintain my own road. Like, yeah, okay, so cuts. We have to cut. Well, you can't increase every year, year after year after year. Who can afford this? I can't. I'm just getting so sick of it. We moved to Wales because the taxes were low. We decided to raise our children there. And over again, the taxes are going up and up. Like, I just should have moved to Auburn. I mean, they have a brand new high school. Why wouldn't I just go there? It's the same cost. Come on, guys, let's whittle this down. Can't we do something? I think that you need to add back in the option for central office, and there needs to be some cuts from the top. You know, throw us a bone. The people at the bottom, these are the ones that are suffering. These are the ones with the lower salaries, and they're cutting their positions. It's ridiculous. So yeah, I'm at a zero, but I would be willing to go up 3%, 4%. If the cuts were realistic. I mean, just cutting from the bottom. Come on, over and over again. And I don't want to, like, field trips. Why you cut $1,600 for field trips? Why don't you cut an admin position for $60,000?
So I'm in the 6.41, and I'd be willing to compromise. Anyone else?
I'm 6.4, and I'll go to the 6.8, but I'm not going to go personally. And I know that my time is short, and I asked the newly elected rep for Wales if he had a preference, and I would support that because he's going to have to support the budget, but he declined and gave me a number. So you're stuck with my 6.4.
Like, again, you can't ask public comment.
It's not a public comment.
Well, I would like to take a recess to go poll some people in Sabata, so I'll be back.
Okay, so now we're still split.
Katie, what is the amount that we spend on teachers? Is 80-something% for the staff? And
So when you look at the cost centers, you can see the percentage to each cost center. So regular instruction has most of the teaching positions in it. I mean, their special ed has teaching positions. Students, staff support have teaching positions in it. So you can see the percentage. And then system administration would be the central office. School administration would be the admin, and then so forth.
Jill, can we get another round of where people are at on their vote, please?
Diane?
I'll do a 5. Not that I'm totally sold on it, but if that's what's going to make people happy, it won't make teachers and schools happy.
Can't make everybody happy.
No, I know.
You just can't.
But remember, the public has the power. We're just giving them our recommendation.
Yeah, they could go, that's a great point. They could go to the budget meeting and say, no,
Put it
we
back
want
in.
1.4. Yeah.
Right, or we
So-
want 10.
Right.
Christy, you're still at 5?
I'm still at 5.
Okay, Robbie?
6.41.
Okay, Bob?
6.41.
Nicole? Oh, you said you were not budging.
Right now.
You think you might change my mind? I'm sorry, I'm still at a 0.
And Laura's still at 5.
I think in the interest of providing a number to give to the public, I would support the 5.
Scott?
I'm sorry, I'm still at 0%.
So that's Diane, Christy, Laura, and myself.
So when we go there, we're going to have to recess because we're going to have to cut tonight. So I'll get my admin, we'll go huddle and see what we can do. You
Mhm.
have to have the cost center set tonight.
Yeah.
So I don't know where we're going to do the 351,000. I mean, we had the 40, we have 47.5 already from that number, so we just need to, we have to put the cost centers, because when you vote, you have to sign the warrants. Yep. So we'll have to recess, and then we'll let you know when we're ready to come back and tell you where the reductions will be.
So Katie, can you consider the,
SRO?
no,
No?
sorry.
Transportation?
You're trying to read my mind. No.
Well, I wrote
let's
your
go.
stuff
I'm going completely out,
Okay.
completely in the other direction. Not closing Sabatis primary.
Oh.
I don't want to
Vacating?
say, thank you. I didn't want to say the other word that people were using. Can you consider vacating Sabatis primary again?
I think
You
it
don't have
needs-
to answer.
Oh, you don't, okay.
You don't have to answer.
I mean, when I
but
go out back, well,
when you
no,
go
I'm
out
just
ba-
going to tell you right now, it would be substantial cost to pay teachers to pack during the summer, unpack. You got to pay them to do that. So.
Okay, so you don't have to answer.
I won't
now,
answer
but
that.
I'm giving an idea.
You're giving me an
okay?
idea, and I'm
I
not going
always
to
get the
defend it.
feedback.
No, I know. I know. It's a really touchy place that I'm in, so I'm just going to listen.
We all are. We
Correct.
all are.
Yep. So I'm listening.
But being part of the committee,
Yep. You're giving me feedback
Hearing
about.
where-
Yep.
All right, so I'm
I'm
gonna
hearing
just
you.
declare that we go for the recess so that
Yep.
Katie and the admin.
That's what I
kind
would
of get
consider.
Their collective thoughts.
Can we move? There's people here that I don't know what to do. Let them go. I'm going to let them go. Okay. All right. Okay. All right. We're going to recess. session for the night, or if she continues. Okay? Norma Jean, we're ready. Okay.
Okay, so now we're gonna come back into session so that we can find out what some of the discussion was.
Do we need a motion?
No, we're still,
We're still in the same.
Still in the thing.
Okay, so, obviously, under high pressure, high stress to find the reductions to meet your goals. And so we do not believe we can reduce any positions further. So we looked at all other items that could we reduce. We cannot reach the 5% tonight. So if that is going to be the will, then we're going to have to probably extend the timeline out. We're going to have to see, like Sharon knows, we're going to have to see what the dates would have to be in order to do that. So Sam is working on this. If you approve it, she's getting the warrants prepared. If you don't, as I told Jill, I think we're just going to have to delay when the referendum's going to be and go to the other timeline. Probably what we're going to have to do. So I didn't put the amounts there because we have amounts and she's trying to do other work. We're doing the best we can. So these are the areas that would be reduced. Workman's comp premium because of what they came in as the possible increase. She feels there's room to move there. The summer lump sum payout. So we have teachers that we have paid out for July and August. So we've reduced that amount that they got paid out. We gave that option this year because we felt we could. We would eliminate B-team middle school sports. The handicap ramp replacement at the high school was done this year, so we removed that. Middle school sports supplies, the courier, the tech coach line, we reduced another coach, I believe. Yes, I'm getting a nod. The incident IQ management system, which is our ticket system when we need things fixed in maintenance, repairs, and technology, we're going to go back to a Google form. We reduced the number of postage meters, Litchfield withdrawal lawyer fees, because we don't think, I mean, if we have to find the money for that, if it actually goes through this year, then we'll come back to the board and discuss that. Maintenance supplies at Carrie Ricker, a paint machine, and Oak Hill High School repairs and maintenance. So that's $248,390. So the budget would be $22,711,590. The percent increase would be 5.26%.
All right, so now we're going to discuss this. And is this something that we would be willing to accept to move on? Diane?
I accept.
Robbie?
No, I'm still at my old number, 6.41.
Bob?
no.
Nicole?
Yes.
Laura?
Yes. Yes. Thank you.
No.
So and I'm a yes, so that's still the 4.
That's 1, 2,
Five.
3, 4, that's 5.
That's 5. That should make the,
I don't have to wait. I can look it up.
You got it.
You got the
Got
weight?
the weight.
Okay. All right.
With 8 people, any 4 people with Sabatis, 2 Sabatis would do it.
so then, so now we just gotta move down. I gotta put the number down. Okay. So then, the overview is done, so now we'll move on to 6.2.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I'd like to move that we extend the meeting to allow all printed items on the agenda to be completed.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Laura?
I was going to say there's not really much left, but would we be able to just do the 6.3 and table the rest the next time? We finish up 6.3 and then we just table the rest until.
enough.
The problem is you don't have another meeting,
We
and
don't have
after
another
July
meeting.
1, I have the authority to hire. Pointing it out. No.
Okay. Any other discussion? Seeing as there's now a call for the vote, all those in favor of going past? Thank you. So 6.2, to approve the 2024-2025 RSU 4 school budget in the amount of $22,711,590.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. All right. None, no discussion. I'll call for the vote. All those in favor? All those not in favor? Do you need who they were?
Yes.
You've got 3 Sabatas.
I've got
Yeah,
Diane,
before.
I want to just say Diane Christie.
Record.
Yeah, you have to publish the
Did you go
names.
against? Okay, so I, Bob and Robbie. Can you do it in?
Yes.
For yes?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
Just letting Sam know so she can continue.
6.3, the motion, I move that the vote entitled Vote to Call and approve the warrants for the budget meeting and the budget validation referendum, and to authorize the notice of amounts adopted to be approved in form presented to this meeting, and that a copy of said vote be included with the minutes of this meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
It looks like they're being printed.
Seeing as there's none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor? Thank you. All right, 7, new business. To elect Allison Niels as a librarian media specialist at Oak Hill High School as recommended by the superintendent of schools.
So moved.
Seconded.
Any discussion? Laura?
Just kind of curious about some of the experience. I know that maybe they're
Not here.
They're not
Right.
here.
They left.
So I don't know if you could help fill in a little bit on that, or
What do you mean experience?
Is she a librarian? Or
Yes, she's a certified librarian.
Which we don't have currently on staff?
Correct.
And we need one by statute?
Exactly.
Okay.
thank you.
Any other discussion? Seeing as there's none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor? Thank you. 7.2, to elect Sheena Jordan as the Director of Transportation as recommended by the Superintendent of Schools.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Laura?
Same question. So
She
so same kind of question, and this is for the new position, and I struggle with this just because we haven't even been able to pass the budget yet. So can you help me with this position and what the experience is that you would recommend, Sheena, for that?
Well, so remember, this is positions replacing the trip coordinator position and turning it into a year-round salaried position. That's the change. So we're not going to have a trip coordinator and a director. All right. And so the person went through the application process. The interview team selected her as the candidate.
She's well qualified.
Nicole?
Did we have other candidates? And she was the most qualified for this position? Thank you.
She was the candidate selected for the position. You're getting into personnel stuff. I just want to speak here.
Any other discussion? Seeing if there's none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor? All those not in favor?
What? It's tied.
It's tied,
Mm-hmm.
so then it fails. Tied vote is a failed vote.
Moving on, 8, there were no committee meetings. Number 9 is board member comments. That was tough. They both went up. Robbie?
Yeah, I'd like to thank Bob for his years on the board, and his expertise in finance helps a lot. And over the years, I think he's been an asset as far as communicating finances with me, helping us understand it. And his years of service is well appreciated.
Laura?
I just wanted to thank Laura for the flowers at the middle school, using her donation of her school board dollars to also do that. And if anybody throws some water on them on the way by, that's greatly appreciated.
Sorry, it's late.
Nicole?
Yeah, I was late. I was like, who are you talking about?
Me too.
Sorry. I just want to thank you, Katie. Thank you, Sam, John. I'm not going to go through all your names, but thank you, all of you. I know what we're asking is not easy, and I just appreciate the work you just did. Thank you. Just thank you.
Yeah, I'd just like to say goodbye to the board. It's been a long journey. I think I've had positive impact on the education of our children over the last 28 years. I hope the board every once in a while revisits the oath that they took for this position and make sure that you live up to the oath, because that's your word. You gave it, you took the oath. That really conflicts with a lot of personal interests in many times, and we have to look out for the kids. That is the oath. It's not look out for the taxpayers. We have to convince the taxpayers that what we're saying is what they really need to do so that they support it. But good luck to you all. You'll see me. For the last 28 years, I've recommended a community, so I've always had to be cautious of what I said, because when I spoke, I was either a board chair or representing the town of Wales. I no longer have to worry about that, so I can talk like I did that got me elected. So you'll see me again, and you all have a great summer.
Thank you. Thank you, Bob.
Thanks, Bob.
Diane?
I'd like to say thank you to Bob, too. You have a lot of expertise. I dealt with you many times on negotiations and everything, so, yeah, thank you for your service.
No? Good. Without any objection, I will declare the meeting adjourned at 10:12, but you cannot leave. You have things to sign.
Signing.
27 copies in triplicate.
We do that.
You do know that.
I used to have one.
I do. I never think to bring it with me. Bring them over.
You start that one. I'll start this one. And how about Robbie starts that one?
Yeah.